We're ready to get underway. So, with that, I am so excited again to be kicking off our webinar together today. More Alpha Predicting Your Next Big Investment, presented by Crunchbase. So, as we're getting started here, I also have my co host who you'll meet in just a moment who's getting ready to join. But I'd actually love to start our webinar today with a poll. We're really excited and want to make this as engaging a webinar together as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and kick things off with our very first poll. And we'd love to learn a bit more about who is joining us today. So we'll give you all just a second. And hey there, Nick, great to see you. Thanks so much for joining.
Yeah, of course. Great to be here.
We're very excited to end the week on a high note. We've almost made it to Friday, and looks like right now we've got a bunch of folks that are answering. So we'll give it just one more minute, and then you and I can talk through the results before we dive into all the juicy goodness that we've got up on deck today. Awesome. All right. Looks like most everybody has been able to have a moment to answer about where they're spending most of their time. So I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and share our results. So it looks like here, in terms of who is joining, we've got a lot of folks who are focused primarily on sourcing and evaluating new opportunities. Not surprising, definitely something I know that we'll discuss at length and you'll be able to show over the course of our demos. But we've got a tie actually for second. And that's a lot of folks are also conducting due diligence and doing deal execution on the investment side. And then a lot of folks who've been dipping their toes into research and market analysis. Lots of exciting things there. And Nick, I know you're going to have some really good stuff that are going to hit on all of those points that were included in that first poll in
Yeah,
our
I'm really
demonstrations.
I'm really glad to see this. This is definitely what we're going to talk about when we do the demo today. And I feel like if I had placed like a DraftKings bet on the results of this poll, I would have guessed that sourcing and evaluation would have been number one. It's definitely something that we hear from the majority of our prospects and customers.
Totally. That makes a lot of sense. Well, let's keep moving right along. So, from our poll, you guys have already been hearing from us, but we wanted to make sure that we did a proper introduction. So, for your panel from Crunchbase today, first, we are joined by Nick Hill, our Director of Revenue Enablement here at Crunchbase. And thanks again so much for your time, Nick. I'll let you take a moment and introduce yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as Liz mentioned, Director of Enablement at Crunchbase, I've been working with our go-to-market and sales teams now for a little while and been in the enablement space for over 10 years. So, very excited to talk about how Crunchbase can help the investment community.
Excellent. And then I am Liz Beavers. I am a senior product marketing manager here at Crunchbase. And I have worked with Nick quite a bit, but really excited to help amplify some of the really wonderful stories that we hear from our investor customers, and also the ways in which you all can leverage Crunchbase to define alpha and predict that next win. So, really excited to talk a little bit more about where Crunchbase differentiates itself, how we can help propel you ahead. And we have a lot to go through. So what I will say from a housekeeping standpoint before Nick and I dig in any further is as you have questions, please make sure to direct those to the Q&A button on your webinar platform. You can drop those there. Our team will be working to answer those as we go along. You'll also see that we have more polls that we are going to be sharing throughout. So we absolutely invite you at any time to engage. We want to hear from you. So really looking forward to that. And later on in the webinar, we'll also be sharing some additional resources and takeaways that you guys can utilize for some inspiration and guidance for where you're thinking about you want to implement Crunchbase next. All right, great. So moving along, let's talk about the pursuit of alpha. So, as investors, you're not missing alpha because you can't find it. You're missing it because the signals that you might be relying on might be buried, delayed, or potentially incomplete. From an investor standpoint, we know that there are a couple of things that you really are aiming for. You want to have the earliest access to high growth startups before your competitors catch on. If you're the first to spot breakout companies, that could be the edge that defines your returns. You also want accurate, timely signals to validate your investment thesis. You want clarity, not noise, on who's growing, who's raising, and who might be at risk. You also want efficient data backed diligence. We know that due diligence periods are often time consuming and manual. And in investing, when timing is of the essence, you strive to validate those opportunities earlier, faster, and act before the market can move. And we also know that as investors that you want proactive portfolio management that really protects your returns. You want the foresight into potential downturns and risks so you're not on the receiving end of the news after those events hit. Now, as far as that goes too, we know that while you're aiming for those, that there are challenges that naturally present themselves. That might range from obscured, fragmented private market signals. You could be spending hours stitching together incomplete data, which puts you on your heels or in a position that's too late to act. You might also be challenged by lagging indicators that's tied to historical context. So you might be just looking at data of the completed funding rounds and press coverage from a recent partnership event that confirms what your competitors already know and have potentially acted on before you. You also might be slowed down by manual research. There are weeks of analysis that go into that could delay decisions and let faster funds seize opportunity ahead of you. And you may also be limited by foresight into potential portfolio risk. That could be indicators of layoffs, potential churn that's happening, or revenue decline that only surfaces after the damage has been done. And Nick, I think we can all say that we know that investors are chasing alpha, but what we've seen with Crunchbase is that only those with predictive intelligence have the opportunity to define alpha.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was talking to a buddy of mine who's in private equity a few weeks ago, and the way he summed it up was noise. There's so much noise. There's noise in the market, there's noise in the tools that we're using. And basically, he described it as I'm having to pull in 15 different tools, sources, research reports to try to understand, what's going on out there. And it would be really awesome to be able to just cut through that noise. And I think it really comes down to that competitive advantage of if I can cut through the noise faster, that allows me to get ahead of my competitors and potentially uncover that extra investment opportunity that's going to make the difference.
That is a perfect sentiment. And I think exactly what we needed to keep moving us along in terms of why Crunchbase for investors. And a lot of that boils down to Crunchbase's data advantage. It gives investors the edge that others simply cannot match. Crunchbase delivers predictive intelligence on private companies trusted by investors worldwide. Crunchbase has nearly 2 decades of experience of best in class private company data, uncovering hard to find firmographics and financials and forecasting key private market activity and trends. It's built on 5 integrated data pillars that you can see here that really gives investors the earliest, most reliable view into where the private market is headed. Those include from our data foundation here, contributed data, verified inputs from companies, partners, government filings, and investors, our captured data, proprietary and direct data partnerships, Crunchbase's engagement data. These are unique signals from 80 million plus active Crunchbase users. Our derived data, which are layered insights revealing market movement and relationships, and our unique predictive data. These are AI powered forecasts that anticipate things like a company's next funding round, exit events in the future, along with growth events. And that foundation is strengthened by 3 core advantages that no other data provider can replicate. Crunchbase has the tenure of nearly 20 years experience in the private market, the trust. We offer over 30 million updates annually from global partners and market participants. That ranges from Fortune 1000 companies to pre-seed startups, and that leaders want to rely on and be on Crunchbase. And Crunchbase has the traffic. With our exclusive engagement data that I just mentioned from our millions of active Crunchbase users, we're able to reveal real-time market behavior that fuels our proprietary predictions and surfaces momentum before it's news. The ability to combine depth, scale and coverage and unique engagement data delivers predictive foresight that no one else can match, that gives investors the most differentiated predictive view of the private market. And with that, Nick, I know we say it all the time, but there's this massive opportunity that Crunchbase can present to investors of really being able to turn raw data into foresight that they can act on. And I think that that speaks for itself.
Yeah, I mean, what I really want to hone in on here is that engagement data, because I think like what it comes down to is anyone can scrape the web, right? Anyone can scrape the web. It's really easy to go out there and just scrape thousands of data points. What you want is validated, contributed data that nobody else has. And Crunchbase is in a unique position because we're seeing that behind the scenes engagement. We're seeing which profiles are getting the most traction, which investors are looking at who. And that's something that nobody else can really match. And I think that that's a really interesting kind of differentiator to hone in on, because it's something that we hear from our customers every day that they're using to make strategic decisions.
Totally. And as we're thinking about what Crunchbase can provide, I also want you all to think about this flow that you can see here to help investors reach alpha. As I mentioned before, and Nick mentioned this as well, in the private markets, timing is everything. But early signals like momentum, market fit, and capital readiness can be buried in that noise. Crunchbase helps you cut through that uncertainty by combining the real time fundamental private market data that you know and trust from Crunchbase, providing historical and current firmographic details and financial activity, paired with Crunchbase's proprietary AI powered predictions. Investors can build investment strategies that reveal opportunities early and where capital should move next, as well as where risk may be quietly rising. This is the flow that can help you define alpha by spotting breakout startups while engaging and securing those high ROI investments before the market catches on. Now, while other providers may offer data that looks backwards, Crunchbase's predictive intelligence puts you a step ahead and leaves your competition to chase you. Today, we're going to cover more about how you can turn this flow into your alpha with Crunchbase's data.
Yeah, and something, Liz, that I want to touch on here is really the power of this predictive intelligence. Like this is something, and I want to get ahead of one of the objections we typically hear here, which is like, hey, I build this myself. My company we have our own predictive models, we have our own predictions that we're putting in. One thing that we've seen is that our predictive data is incredibly strong. We actually just reached over 5,000 accurate predictions here at Crunchbase. But the second thing that I want to point out here is that a lot of prospects and customers are not only using our predictive data to validate their own models, they're also using the underlying signals that we provide, the contributing signals, to strengthen their own models. So I would encourage you not just to look at this predictive intelligence as, well, this is one model that you can choose from. There's a lot of power underneath the surface that you get access to that you can leverage as well.
Ah, perfect sentiment. I couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you so much for that background there, Nick. Um, now, there's a lot more meat for us to dig into. So before we keep going, wanted to align us on what you can expect from the rest of our time together. So next up, Nick and I are going to chat through how top investors are gaining the edge with Crunchbase. We're going to walk through some real world examples of how firms are overcoming some of the challenges that we had discussed earlier to identify high growth startups earlier and separate themselves from the pack. Then we're going to dive into a live look at both Crunchbase's software and the Crunchbase API. As Nick provides those overviews, you're going to see how investors use both the software and the API together to accelerate research, automate workflows, and predict their next big investment opportunity. And finally, we'll close our time out with a recap of what we've seen. So that's going to cover where you can grow, how predictive intelligence can help you define alpha, and all of that backed by real ROI from firms who are already using Crunchbase. Anything else before we keep going that you would like to add, Nick?
No, no, no. You finally stumped me. I've got nothing to
Yeah.
add on the roadmap slide. Yeah, I think we're good.
Beautiful. Sounds good. And again, just as a reminder, I always have my housekeeping hat on. Our team is here to answer questions along the way, so be sure to drop those in the Q&A. We'll work to get to and address those throughout the course of the webinar. Of course, if you have additional questions that come up afterwards, our team is more than happy to have a more in-depth discussion to address your question and your needs. All right. So next, how investors gain the edge with Crunchbase. So from discovery to due diligence to portfolio management, Crunchbase turns private market data into predictive foresight that defines alpha. Here, I really want to hone in on four key benefits that we've seen customers and investors specifically reap from Crunchbase to help them get ahead. The first one, spot breakout startups first. Now, we've seen firms, one that comes to mind is Picus Capital, using Crunchbase's private company intelligence to uncover emerging startups before the rest of the market has even noticed them. In this case, instead of chasing deals that were previously based on after funding rounds had been announced, this team has been able to identify high growth companies early and uncover competitors and follow on investors by looking at patterns and analysis that's really transformed their diligence process by relying on Crunchbase's data. They've noted that using Crunchbase has been the difference between reacting to market noise and predicting what's next. So, again, all of this is to really be the first one to find the next breakout startup, the next unicorn, before the market even has time to understand that they exist and can act on them themselves. The next benefit that we've also heard many of our customers experience is they have, and Nick had just alluded to this as well, they have the opportunity to really strengthen the proprietary models that they've built and their internal investment workflows. Now, one global corporate venture arm that we know of has strengthened its investment models and automated workflows by embedding Crunchbase's data and predictions directly into their research process. With early stage private company data and AI powered predictions and insights, this firm eliminated manual data pulls and they cut down hours of manual research with real time visibility into which sectors and startups were gaining momentum, helping them make faster, higher confidence investment decisions, which was everything to them. This team even went so far as describing Crunchbase's data as, quote, the golden nugget in their investment deal evaluation. And they mentioned that Crunchbase is where confidence meets efficiency. I think that that is a huge testament for where you can take the existing models that you have today in your workflows and really level it up and strengthen it with Crunchbase's data. The next benefit that I want to hone in as well is the ability to accelerate due diligence. We know that this is a time intensive process, but it's key for you to be able to understand the value of the opportunity and investment that you're pursuing. Another mid market investment advisory firm that's working with Crunchbase has been able to lean on our data to centralize research on emerging companies in really niche sectors. This has been critical to expedite their due diligence process. They found that by enriching and their analysis with Crunchbase's foresight, in particular growth and funding predictions, paired with the hard to find financial and firmographic details that we provide, their team has reduced their manual research time by more than 25%. This has helped their team shift from time intensive data gathering, and they've been able to spend more time executing on high value deals that matter to their firm. When data moves faster, so do your returns. And then the last benefit is the ability to proactively mitigate your risks. We've worked with multinational firms like BBVA and DST Global, and Crunchbase has helped these teams identify warning signs from slowing growth to shifts in leadership at investment opportunities they're pursuing before they have a ripple effect in the market. Now, this foresight alone has helped them rebalance portfolios proactively, protecting performance and strengthening their returns. Now, whether it's sourcing earlier, validating faster, or mitigating risks before it's visible, these investors all have one thing in common. They use Crunchbase to anticipate the market, not react to it. Nick, it looks like you've got something to say, so I'll take a quick breather. I know we packed in a lot of information there, but there's just so many great use cases and benefits that we've been able to see investors reap by integrating, leveraging, and referencing Crunchbase.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. These are definitely the four biggest strengths that Crunchbase has in helping investors. But I do want to call your attention to number one, because I think that is a very unique area where we have a huge edge. So something that I've heard from a lot of prospects in the sales calls I've been coaching is that we are the number one data provider for spotting breakout startups. Like, period. We're our data, especially with early stage companies, is hands down the best that you can get. And so if that's something that you're interested in, I'd highly encourage you to talk to a member of our sales team about it, because we can show you some of that coverage in those interactions.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think the other thing that I really want to drive home before we move on is that across every stage of the investment cycle, regardless of where you're spending time, like we were talking about at the very top of our time together, Crunchbase is really going to give you all as investors the visibility, the conviction, and the foresight to define alpha, not chase it. So, as we are moving along, we want to touch on the fact that Crunchbase is a full solution that investors use to see, decide, and act. Now, as we talk about defining alpha, gaining an edge, this is what it can look like in practice with Crunchbase. The Crunchbase software can give investors instant access to trusted private company data to see what's happening across the market, uncover opportunities, and validate theses in real time from one place with no setup required. The Crunchbase API can take that same intelligence further, extending it to where you live and work. This is where you can access and feed live insights, predictions, firmographic, and financial data into your models, dashboards, and workflows so that your team is acting on the most current private company activity and future predictions, not chasing lagging signals, but it's helping to inform your next investment or ways to maintain your portfolio's health. And the two together gives investors a single reliable source of truth and a foundation to build a predictive, proactive investment strategy on, really anticipating those market shifts. So, again, you have the chance to identify those opportunities early and move faster with confidence.
Yeah, I think something that I would also want to add to this, Liz, is just how simple all of this is to set up and use. I mean, I'm gonna show you the software here in just a moment, but the time to insight that you're able to gain with Crunchbase, it's incredibly efficient. Like, these visual maps, all of this has been set up for you to be able to do within just a few clicks, a few API calls, a few enrichment steps. I mean, all of it is designed for very, very fast time to insight. So not only are we giving these benefits, but I think what a lot of our investment customers have seen is just how quickly they can onboard and implement.
I love that. Quick time to value. What a key piece to capitalize on so that you can move next on your next large opportunity. Perfect. Now, before we dive into the demos, which I am so excited to walk you guys through, I'm going to go ahead and kick off our next poll here. Oh, I didn't ever stop sharing the first poll. Sorry about that, guys.
In case
Always something fun.
we
Yeah,
really
we're really
wanted to see
driving
those
that home.
results. Yeah.
As for the second poll, I've gone ahead and launched that. Nick, I'm really excited to see what folks are going to say for this one. We would love to understand, where does your investment workflow slow down the most? I think we hear a lot of different answers to this question, but I'm really interested to see what those who are attending today are going to say. And as that's going, I'm going to go ahead and stop my screen share as well, and we'll be ready to hand it over to you. We've got a lot of folks who are answering here, so we'll give that just a couple more seconds.
Yeah, I'll admit I'm not sure what I would predict on the answer to this one. I think there's a lot of really good stuff that we can uncover here. So I'll let the results of this poll decide where I start on my demo a little bit, I think.
Perfect. Well, I'm going to go ahead and end it then, and let's share out these results. I promise I'll stop sharing them as well so we don't dwell, but can move forward into the future, just like our predictions. So, for this one, it looks like a lot of our attendees, a pretty overwhelming amount actually mentioned that they have like the biggest challenge and friction point of finding reliable private market data and early signals. I think throughout both of your demos and our discussion today, we can definitely show where Crunchbase can help provide that foundation for investors. And then it also looks like the next one is also tied. This is very similar to the first poll. We've got a good chunk of folks mentioning that they've got some friction points around sourcing high growth startups before their competitors, as well as conducting due diligence effectively.
Yeah, I definitely think. I mean, I probably would have guessed number one just based on the answers to the first poll, right? And I want to focus in on that word reliability because I think that again, there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of data out there. What's true, especially when it comes to private market data, where
Right.
you really have to trust the data sources that you're looking at. So I would imagine that that is a big issue in finding reliable data. And of course, we can talk a little bit about how Crunchbase sources that.
Definitely. That sounds good. Well, with that, I will officially stop sharing this poll. And Nick, I will pass the reins over to you as we dive into our demos.
Yeah, that sounds great. So let's go ahead and pull this up. And Liz, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can. You are good to
Perfect.
go.
Awesome. All right. So for the purposes of this demo, there are kind of three main things that I want to show everybody. First, we'll talk about how to use Crunchbase to source new deals, and specifically, we'll take a look at some startups since that was of interest to the group. Second, we'll talk about how to use Crunchbase to kind of qualify and vet those deals. So it's one thing to be able to just get a big list of companies, but we'll talk about how to enrich data from Crunchbase and use that data to narrow that company list down. And then finally, we'll talk a little bit about due diligence and market intelligence. So we'll actually walk through how Crunchbase can feed you a 360-degree view of a company, and then how you can use Crunchbase to keep an eye on both your market and your competitors. So let's say that I am an investment analyst working for an investment organization, and I'm looking for opportunities that I could potentially present to our partners. There are a couple of different things I can do right when I first log into Crunchbase. And the first thing I want to do is personalize my homepage so that I can be the first to know about any market activity in the markets that I care about. And I can also keep an eye on my current existing portfolio. So you'll notice these two tabs here. We've got the Discover tab and the Saved Companies tab. For the Discover tab, let's just say I want to see all organizations that are based in North America, specifically in the cybersecurity industry. And I want to see organizations that are predicted to grow, raise funding, be acquired, or go public. So I'm using Crunchbase's proprietary predictions to basically be the first to know. And this is going to create a little bit of I like to think of it as like a Facebook news feed or timeline, where as soon as I log in, I'm seeing only the companies in my preferred location and industry. And this is constantly going to be up to date. The second thing that a lot of our investing customers are doing is using Crunchbase to keep an eye on their current portfolio. So Crunchbase allows you to import a CSV list of all of your of any company as long as you have the name and domain. So what I can do here is I can say on my saved companies, let's go ahead and take a look at Nick's FinTech targets. And I specifically want to know anytime one of my portfolio organizations has a major news event. So this could be something like an award, a layoff, a partnership announcement, or a product launch. And again, within just a few clicks, I now have my Discover page allowing me to be the first to know about new up and comers in this location and industry. And then I have my saved company page showing me what's going on in my current portfolio. So that's just a very quick way to kind of personalize what you're seeing when you log in. The second thing that I want to do is use Crunchbase to build a list of opportunities for investment. So let's go ahead and use Crunchbase's AI search companion Scout for that. Now, Scout is a text to search application within the Crunchbase platform. It allows you to search through hundreds of different filters. So I could have asked it for employee count, headquarters location, total funding amounts. I can even use Scout for predictions. So I can ask Scout to show me companies that are predicted to raise funding in the next 6 months, or companies that are predicted to IPO, for example. In this example, what it's done is it's now given me a list of AI startups within these regions that have received seed funding in the last 18 months, and it looks like there are 131 results. So let's go ahead and dive into this. So now I have this list of 131 potential targets, but maybe I want to vet this a little bit further based on the investment criteria of my firm. So let's go ahead and add a few things. First, let's ask for only companies that are very likely or probable to raise funding. And then second, let's make sure that we have at least a little bit of a financial fundamental here. Let's look for companies that have at least 1 million in recurring revenue. So immediately I've narrowed my list down to 13 high fit results of organizations that I can do more diligence on. And there are a couple of things I can do with this. The first is I can save this search. So I can go in and say, these are Nick's, LATAM and Southeast Asia targets. And Crunchbase allows me to set daily or weekly email reminders anytime a new target hits this search. So earlier you heard Liz talk about you want to be the first to know about these breakout startups. No matter what your investment criteria is, you can be the first to know when a new organization meets that criteria, and that's what this is doing for me. So I'm going to say, give me a daily update for new profiles that fit, new funding rounds, new IPOs and acquisitions. From there, I can also save this list. So I can say, let's go ahead and create a new list here. And then what I can do with that is now if I go back to my home page, I can set that to be on my personalized home page so that I'm constantly seeing more info. The last thing that I want to do is I want to enrich this data table because you'll notice I only have a few columns here, but I want to see as much information as possible to be able to make quick decisions. So let's go ahead and click Edit View. And let's add a few things. Some of the things I always like to add are website and full description. And then if I go down to funding, I always like to know about the number of funding rounds, last funding amount and type. And then if I go to investors, I can see who are their lead investors and how many investors do they have. And by clicking apply, I immediately have enriched this table so that now I can sort, I can filter, and I can make better decisions that way. So hopefully this has shown you just in a few minutes kind of how you can use Crunchbase to source new opportunities. And of course, there are a lot of different filters that I could have added there. The second thing that I want to show you, though, is how you can perform diligence once you have an organization in mind. So let's go ahead and take a look at my friends over at Elise AI. One of my buddies heads up enablement for them, so I always like to use them for this. And you'll notice within the profile page, there's a lot of information. So I just want to point your attention to a couple of different things. First, you're immediately going to see an overview of this organization, headquarters, employee count, private, latest round of funding, etc. Second, you'll see a full timeline breakdown of their growth and heat score. If I look at Elise AI's growth score, I see that in November of 2024, they hit a huge growth ramp. So maybe I want to dig into that last year and really start to understand what happened here. I can click on these milestones and see funding announcements, product launches, etc., all in one place. If I scroll down a little bit further, I'll see some more details about our proprietary predictions and insights. And this is where things get really interesting. So first, I can see all of the details of why we believe this company is going to grow and what are the top contributing factors for adding to that, that thesis. And then here I can also see our press references and similar companies that are showing growth that lead us to believe this company will as well. The other thing that's interesting is not only are we providing you with funding predictions, we're actually giving you percentages and timelines. So I'm able to tell you we believe there's an 85% chance this is going to happen in the next 6 months, and give you some of the contributing factors as to why. And a little sneak peek, but if you're using Crunchbase's API, you can actually see all of the underlying signals and the complete timeline of signals for why we believe these predictions are going to take place. Within an organization, I can always see any notable events, something that I would care about as an investor, to be able to add to the timeline. Any similar companies, this can be valuable if you've recently had a successful exit with an organization and you want to see similar organizations that you might partner with or invest in. All of the products they're focused on, and then a complete list of all of their funding rounds. And this can get very, very granular. So if I click on the financial details, I'll see all of the funding that they've raised in each round, cumulative funding raised over time, and every single round with the investors, the money raised, and the lead investor. So you can start to get an understanding of the investment history of this account. The last thing, of course, are the people involved. So we've got our C-levels and board members, and then aggregated news and press. So we talked earlier about making sure that we're getting our data from reliable sources. So you'll be able to see all of the kind of aggregated news and press sources here that you can pull from as you're putting your investment recommendations together. So this is hopefully showing you, again, I kind of just tipped the iceberg here, but it's hopefully showing you that you have this one-stop shop where you're seeing a lot of company information in one place where you can do a lot of diligence. The last thing that I want to show you is how Crunchbase can be used for market and competitive intelligence. And for that, I want to head back to our AI search builder. You'll notice at the top that originally I was searching for companies, but Crunchbase also gives you the ability to search for other investors. And in fact, if I wanted to add just a few quick filters here, I could say to show me Texas investors that specifically have at least 25 investments and at least 10 exits. And immediately I'm going to get a narrowed down result of all of the investment firms that meet that criteria. And Crunchbase will actually provide you with a full investment thesis on these venture funds. So if I go here and I scroll down to our investment thesis, you have the ability to take a look at these funds and see all of the investments they've made over time, what are the industries they're primarily interested in, and then what are their exits and most notable exits that this venture fund is known for. So that's one way that you can get kind of a pulse on the market there. And then the last thing that you can do here is you can search for any recent funding rounds or acquisitions. So I can look, for example, at any funding rounds that have occurred in the last 90 days within a particular industry. Same thing with acquisitions. I can look at particular geographical regions and ask for all of the acquisitions that have occurred within certain industries or funding amounts. The final thing that I want to show you when it comes to market intelligence is something I'm very excited about. It's actually kind of hot off the press, and it's something that we'll be developing across Q4 and Q1 of next year, which is our Crunchbase Market Intelligence launch. Now, what I'm showing you is still in Figma prototype. This is not live in our platform yet, but we're going to be launching a couple of different things. The first is we'll be launching competitors and competitive intelligence for a given organization. So if I were to click on an org that I'm interested in, I'll be able to see all of their top competitors, as well as a competitive score, which is kind of Crunchbase's opinion on how well these companies are competing. Finally, we also see this competitive landscape. So here I can add or remove any company that I'm interested in, and I can see how long have these companies been active and what is their active growth score. So what does the competitive landscape for this particular organization look like? The last thing that we're offering is what we call a full market map. And this is really exciting. It actually is a complete visual on the performance of a given market. So here I can see total funding and year-to-date funding. I can see all of the different subcategories that I might be interested in. I'm going to expand this a little bit here. I can see all of the subcategories or sub-industries that I might be interested in, and I can completely customize this by industry, location. I can track the different companies within these sub-industries. So it really allows me to dig in and understand kind of what are the average growth, what's the average growth or funding that's occurring, and what are some of the top players within this market. And you'll notice if I scroll down a little further, you'll see things like what are the top acquisition targets that I should be interested in within this market, or what are some of the top IPO candidates that I can take a look at. So a lot of really good stuff to come when it comes to market intelligence. And hopefully in this short demo, I've been able to show you that you can use Crunchbase to source new opportunities, do diligence on those opportunities, and keep a pulse on how capital is being allocated. And Liz, with that, I'll hand it back over to you.
Perfect. That was so helpful. Such a great way to center our focus on what's possible for investors by just using Crunchbase's software. And I love to, with that quick preview that Nick showed at the end, as he mentioned, that's something that our team is eagerly working on. We're really excited to make all those market intelligence features available later this year and into early Q1. But what I find is interesting, I was looking back at the poll results, Nick, is that we actually had a low number of folks, and I understand it's based on what you're prioritizing within your investment process, but the ability to track portfolio risk and market movement actually didn't score as high as I thought it would. But I do think with what you were just showcasing, that having that market intelligence fueled in those other arenas is going to be a huge uplift because let's face it, even when you're sourcing new investment opportunities or you're performing that due diligence, in some way, shape, or form, you are still performing market analysis and competitive research. So I think that that's a great place that's just going to constantly be infused in the actions that folks that are joining us today are going to be taking and will be able to take with Crunchbase to propel them ahead.
Yeah, I agree. And I would say, thinking about prioritization, I realize it may be a little bit lower on the priority list, but it's also table stakes, right? I mean, you
Totally.
absolutely need to understand how capital is being allocated in the markets you're interested in, as well as who the competitors are. So I think it's something that while it may not be top priority, it's certainly important.
Definitely. Now, I know that through your demo, you had alluded to the fact that there are some predictions and some additional data capabilities that are going to be accessible only through our API. And just as Nick had mentioned, the software really is such a great way to visualize the power of our private company data and our intelligence there. But Nick, I'm going to actually pass things back to you to give us a quick overview of what Crunchbase's data looks like as you're accessing and tapping into it using Crunchbase's API.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to show this. And one of the things I'll point out is, the Crunchbase API is incredibly flexible. It's something where, there we see a lot of different use cases for this across the investment community. And there are over 650 different data fields that you can pull and choose from depending on the package that you choose. So there are a lot of things I could show. I'm going to keep this very simple. And one of the things I want to show our data in is through our data partner, Snowflake. Snowflake is you have the ability to access all Crunchbase data within Snowflake, depending on what you've purchased from us. And you'll notice that within Snowflake, we have a couple of data tables that I can access. Let's go ahead and just choose this US-based Series ABC company table. You immediately see that there are 917 in this table that I've specifically asked it to show me. And let's click on one of these companies just to pull it up. Let's use NIT. If I click on any given organization, this table is going to immediately return all of the data that I've asked it for. Now, as I mentioned, we have over, I think, 670 fields to choose from, but it's only going to return the data fields that I've called for in this instance. There are two things that I want to point your attention to. First, you'll notice obviously that it's giving me some basic information on headcount, revenue, industry, headquarters, etc. But something that's unique to the API is this funding probability score timeline. What this is doing is it's saying not only are we going to give you like an overview of the percentage that we think this org will raise funding, we're also going to give you percentages within specific timelines. So this is allowing you to really drill down into what we believe is going to be the case, and allow you to make kind of more granular investment decisions there. The second thing that I want to point your attention to, obviously you see all of the same great things that you saw in our software, acquisition, growth scores, but two that we don't currently offer in the software platform that are unique to API are our layoff probability and our closure probability. So here you can see, luckily for our friends at NIT, this is a very low probability score here, but you can see the level of risk that we're anticipating for any given organization. So as you're thinking about, as you're doing your research, this is just another signal that will help you determine, okay, there's a very, very low probability of risk here. That shows me that this is something I could potentially present as an investment opportunity. So lots more that we could discuss with the API. And of course, we also had a webinar a few months ago on our API that I would encourage you to look at. But that's just kind of a quick overview of how this looks.
That's so helpful, Nick. And I think that gives folks that are listening in a real sense for the shape of Crunchbase's data. There's so many different ways, just as you were mentioning, looking at the probability tiers and scores across our prediction suite that Crunchbase offer, in addition to being able to access our key fundamental private company data. So still being able to access and tap into financial details, firmographic information paired with the ability to anticipate those next key milestones for private companies. I think we've seen it used in a multitude of ways for investors. Again, strengthening a proprietary model, feeding it into a dashboard, you name it. There is so much flexibility and potential there, and just that simple access to higher fidelity data than what you were just able to see and interact with on the software. There's a lot of power there. All right, great. Well, taking back the reins, and as we're getting close to the end of our time together, there's just a few more things that I'd like to cover before we bid you adieu. So I really want to kind of wrap things up from the demo discussions that Nick presented on those two sides of Crunchbase's solution. As he showed you, each of those pieces of Crunchbase are certainly powerful on their own, but together, using them together, it's truly transformative for investors. The software gives you the visibility to see and decide on your next qualified investment lead, helping uncover private company earlier, understanding those companies' growth trajectories, and validating opportunities in real time. As Nick also discussed, the API can take that same intelligence that you are seeing in Crunchbase and moves it one step further for you, bringing live data, predictions, and insights right into your firm's own systems, dashboards, and models so that you can act faster, benchmark smarter, and scale your foresight across your team. And together, the software and the API create a single predictive ecosystem to source high growth breakout companies so that you can move faster and deploy capital with precision to maximize your return. So I said it once, I'm going to stress it again. It really is this notion of the software and the API used together help strengthen what investors are after. It gives you that single source of private company intelligence and helps you predict winners, move fast, deploy capital, and exit strong. Before we move from this slide, I know that you shared a lot about this in both aspects of your demo, Nick, but I do want to highlight as well, for those of you who are on the line, we've also added in a resource. So if you go to your navigation panel, you'll see we have a wonderful asset that provides really wonderful information around both Crunchbase's software and the API and ways that you can benefit by using those together to take your investment strategy forward. So definitely reference that for additional education, ideas. And that's also something that we'd be happy to talk with you in more detail on a tailored call and demonstration.
Yeah, and I would second that. I really think, one of the only downsides to a webinar like this is I have to zoom out and show you things that really apply to as many people as possible. What I would encourage you to do is really book some time with our sales staff, because, our solution engineering team is going to be able to jump on and show you what it can specifically do for you. And I think that's where things get really, really powerful, of like, how can this help your firm to make better decisions? So if you're even the least bit curious, I would highly encourage you to reach out and see if there may be an opportunity to work together.
Totally agree with that. And before we totally wrap up our discussion for today, I do have another poll for us. So you're not off the hook from participating yet, everyone. And for our last question, we would love to understand, after our discussion today and from the demonstrations that Nick provided, where do you see Crunchbase having the biggest impact for your firm? Again, it might be early ideas that you're chewing on being able to act on. Maybe it's an idea that you came into the webinar with that you want to be able to take after the fact, but would love to understand, based on all we discussed, where you see the opportunity, and the potential impact that we could have for you moving forward. So we'll let that run for just another minute. Um, all right, we'll go ahead and end that, Nick, and we'll take a quick peek at how folks have answered here.
Yeah.
Um, And from the results, I think this was, again, as you talked about, being able to predict how folks are going to respond. I also think that based on what you showed, especially in the software, but even from what we saw in what the API could call, the ability to discover those high growth startups earlier, is definitely something that I think we hear a lot of folks, even when we're having an evaluation, speaking to the most initial tangible value that they could see. And
Yeah,
we
and
have,
and
go
I
ahead.
I think that's no surprise to me that that's one of the most valuable areas of the platform that people saw, and also one of the biggest problems that people have had.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the things that we hear quite often is, I don't know how I did this before Crunchbase, right? Like, I don't remember how I was trying to source opportunities from all of these different sources without just clicking through a quick search, a quick filter, and pulling up that list. So I definitely think that's no surprise to see that.
Yeah, and the other one that I see, and that I love seeing as well, because I do think that we've heard this a lot from investors who are using Crunchbase, is the ability to strengthen their internal models and their investment strategy. And I think that's the core of what we wanted to make sure that we hit on today, is the accessibility of not only being able to see the data, but also acting on it, and by integrating it into those models, making your proprietary investment models stronger so that your strategy is really shifting to that predictive notion. Um, Really interesting stuff there. Cool. Well, for the sake of time, will keep us moving along, and we are getting close to wrapping up. So, really wanted to leave you all with a couple of key takeaways, from our time together. Now, if you'll remember way back when at the top of the hour, we started talking about some of the challenges that slow investors down. Again, that might be fragmented signals, lagging data that could potentially be hindering your thesis validation or your deal evaluations. It might be manual research that's slowing down your diligence cycles, or perhaps you're just being blocked because you're relying so heavily upon historical data. But I think what you just saw from both of the demos that Nick provided in the software and in Crunchbase's API is how Crunchbase can close that gap and help you overcome those hurdles. The results really speak for themselves here. We've seen investors using Crunchbase are moving 25% faster in deal evaluation and diligence, surfacing high ROI opportunities before others even see them. We've also seen firms saving 5 hours per week per investor, which, again, if you multiply that on the size of your firm, is huge dividends. And they've done that by embedding Crunchbase's data and predictions directly into their workflows. This frees them to have more time to put into strategy, portfolio analysis, and so that they can really work on those higher value investment opportunities. And by using the software and the API together, firms are operating from one predictive source of truth, enhancing their investment models, optimizing capital deployment, and eliminating redundant costs and redundant tools. This is really what it means to shift from reactive to predictive. And the investors defining alpha aren't just acting faster, they're investing smarter, they're scaling foresight across their teams and positioning themselves for stronger exits.
Yeah, I mean, I think thinking about the results there, I one thing we always ask our customers and our prospects is like, what is the additional value to you of one more deal, one more high quality deal? If you can get that faster deal evaluation, spend more time on the diligence, you're saving that manual research time. If that can get you to even one more, like, what is the value of that to you?
I absolutely agree with that, Nick. And the very last thing beyond those key results that I want you to constantly be thinking and about that one more deal thought process that Nick just left you with, I want to return to the Crunchbase data advantage that we shared with you all at the beginning of our time together, and really how you can turn Crunchbase's data into your alpha. Now, in terms of how this can best serve you for investors, oh, wow, sorry guys, I clicked too many ahead. As far as our tenure goes, keep in mind again, Crunchbase has nearly 20 years of experience tracking private company data, and that gives us unmatched expertise across firmographics and financials in the private market, really helping investors stand out, anticipate market shifts, and the ability to move forward. From a trust standpoint, Crunchbase's data is built on verified contributions from partners, investors, and government filings that gives you reliable, forward-looking signals that help you anticipate what's ahead so you can confidently validate opportunities aligned with your investment appetite and accelerate due diligence cycles. And then Crunchbase's traffic, it's with the unique engagement data that we have that others simply cannot match. Again, we have those unique engagement signals from over 80 million and growing active users on Crunchbase. And with that, we are able to deliver unique private market activity no one else can. This unmatched combination of tenure, trust, and traffic makes Crunchbase the solution for private market decision making. Nick, is there anything else that you want to add? I know that we've talked about this a lot, but I think there's so much strength in this and the potential here for investors.
No, I don't think anything to add here. I really think you hit the nail on the head. Like, these are the things that really set us apart in being able to help you. And so would love to talk to anyone about it further.
Perfect. So before we close out our time, I know we are in the final 2 minutes. There have been a lot of questions that have come through. If we didn't have an opportunity to answer those today, know that our team will absolutely follow up with you. Make sure that you've got the information that you need and the answers that you wanted to uncover. One last time, as far as where you can benefit from Crunchbase's solution, wanted to remind you that we have access to Crunchbase's software and our platform. There are also integrations that could be key in your investment workflows and tech stack, but also the ability to leverage Crunchbase's data through the Crunchbase API. So, the very last thing that I want to leave you all with before you go, I just started our final poll and would love to learn after our discussion today how interested you are in leveraging Crunchbase's company intelligence to guide your investment strategy. Again, this is just a really great opportunity, as Nick mentioned, that you can have a truly consultative discussion with our team so that we can uncover what signals and how you can uniquely leverage and benefit from integrating and using Crunchbase within your investment workflows. So, would love the opportunity to carry that discussion on further with you. Perfect. And I know we are right at time here, but if you do have, again, additional questions, please reach out to our team. We'll be sure to follow up with you with any questions that we might not have been able to answer today. There are, again, some great resources that are nested in the resources section at the bottom of your webinar. But otherwise, thank you all so much for the engaging questions, participating in all our polls. We hope that you found today to be beneficial, and we look forward to continuing the conversation. Nick, thank you so much for your time, for all of your thoughtful input and insights. But otherwise, take care, everybody. Take care of yourselves and have a wonderful rest of your week. Thanks all.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.